sky, gazing far into the night. I raise my hand to the fire, but it's no use, 'cause you can't stop it from shining through. It's true, baby, let the light shine through. If you believe it's true, baby, won't you let the light shine through for you.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Jason. This is the Elite FPL podcast, and with me this evening, I've got the Daily Llama, one of our long-time loyal moderators. Good evening, Daily Llama. How are you doing?
Good evening, Jason. Good evening, happy peoples. Happy New Year to you all. Happy New Year to you, Jason. Looking forward to tonight.
Happy New Year to everybody. It's 2020. It's crazy. I thought we'd all be driving around or flying around in cars up in the air, and we'd be colonising Mars, but unfortunately that's not the case. Instead we are dilemmas over Gameweek 22 in fantasy football, and what can I say really, other than the fact that it's been pretty diabolical for me for the last few game weeks, and I've had a really nice break from FPL. I've actually turned off quite a bit from FPL. I'm just going to move the camera slightly over because there we go, when I talk into the mic. How about you, Llama? Have you managed to take a bit of a break from FPL over this period?
I just like the fact that you've invited me on, because unfortunately Steve-O couldn't make it this evening, whilst I've hit an all-time low of 1.4 million as an OR rank. Yeah, the break was welcomed.
Absolutely, and on that, touching on that subject, Steve-O messaged me pretty much this afternoon saying that he was unable to join us on the show this evening due to the fact that he's got to be up at like 2 a.m. And we generally go for 2 hours, so he needs to sleep. He needs to be healthy. He needs to not let the podcast affect his work and life. So hopefully Steve-O will have something planned at some point to discuss what he's doing for the weekend. He has given me his team and the team screenshots, which I'll share with you guys later on in the stream, and I'm sure he will try to do a bonus stream for you guys. And also we'll be doing some more member streams coming up as well. This evening is going to be talking about the fixtures for this weekend, the predictions that we are looking at. But firstly, I think it's a great way to start off the show just by just talking about the Champions League, the Elite FPL Champions League that Daily Llama has so kindly set up and running with help from other moderators. Daily Llama, how was the first game week of the Champions League?
Really, really good. I want to just say quickly though first that I want to say thanks to Firetog, who made great changes to the Champions League, so it's a lot better presented now, I think. But the banter that's going on within Discord and around Twitter regarding the Champions League's been like really, really good. Everyone's buzzing about it. There's a few good fixtures, tasty fixtures coming up for the second week this week coming. The first one, we saw FPL Lynn in Group A striding ahead of FPL Penguin there by 4 points. So she leads the way in Group A. There's been a couple of close calls as well. I'm sitting, lost my first game, which was nice. Just try to see how you ended up getting on, Jason.
Yeah, so just bringing up.
You were in the group of death, weren't you?
I am in the group of death. I actually started off really well. I beat a man Dylan. But let me just. So again, just going on to get to Group A of the Champions League. Again, FPL Penguin winning there, and even with a point hit. Is that right? Am I getting that right? Yeah. 67 points in the game week. Really well done. We got right. We're going into Group B. Anyone in Group B that's doing Jane? Jane
beat me. Thanks for reminding me of that, Jason.
Yes. Yeah, I'm just bringing it up now. That's. You're having a bit of a stinker at the moment, aren't you? But it's going to get better for you, Lama. It's going to get better for you. I promise you, it's going to be. Go to the standing tab. Go to the standings tab.
Group standings for anyone listening or anyone that wants to go in. I'm sure one of the mods will put the link to the website. If you go to the bottom, Jason, you'll see group standings.
Oh right, there we go. That's it.
That's what Firetog. Yeah. So he's put that together, and I think it just makes it an easier place to go for people to just get a snapshot of how they're doing, like thus far.
That's ridiculous. That's amazing. That's absolutely amazing. So am I right in saying I'm no spreadsheet man by any stretch of the imagination, but am I right in saying that there's formulas that are in this spreadsheet that you just enter the data once that auto pre-populates? Is that correct?
That is correct.
That's amazing, and
so Firetog's to thank for that. To be totally honest,
Firetog to the rescue yet again on that one. I appreciate that. So yeah, we're going into Group A. This makes it so much easier. There we go. Lynn and FPL Penguin there winning their games along with Nick Harris. And I like that. I love this format. We've got Raffiali and Jane topping with Gerard O'Reilly topping the Group B chart there. Obviously, you losing. To Jane, it was hopefully it's just the first game, Lama. It's not the end of the world.
It's to do with winning your home games. We have in the Champions League, Jason. That's what it's all about.
We have a draw in Group C, guys. So both Stevo and Ryan Seachin both returned 47. So we don't have a rule on a draw. Then we're just going to give them 1 point.
But you do have a game coming up where Stevo's playing against FPL Hot Sauce this weekend.
Ah, yes. So Steve could go top. Yeah,
there's a good matchup there.
A good matchup.
There's actually, just while you're flicking through it, there's actually a few good matchups coming up over this game week. In Group E, both the FPL Cougars actually play each other. which is pretty. I don't know how that happened, but that's a pretty decent one. You've got your group, the Group of Death. You've got Group F, I should say. You've got playing against Keyboy, but I think. And I
just want to say again, I want to reiterate to you guys, I'm having a shocker, but I'm still managed to get 3 points in the Champions League. Could it be one of those seasons for me that I do really bad in the league, but I actually do okay in this cup competition? Who knows?
What? So you get to win your own merch? Is that what you're saying?
I'm after the Bitcoin, mate. I'm after the Bitcoin. I'm going to invest.
Bitcoin. But you've got Marlon Moore playing against Aman Dillon this week. And I think that probably is the tie of the round.
Let's just let's talk about Group D. Alpine FPL, Bandwagon Central, along with Oscar, No Pookie No Party, and Mr. Malloy there with Auto Reclose, all topping that first, second, and third respectively. Ben Krellin and Brett Mollison and Zach Obrat failing to get any points just yet, but it's early days, like I said. But it's a good start for those. Who were the 3 points there, and Phil Potter, Chris from the Cougars, and also Kieran from the Cougars returning a win there. And then they won't be they shouldn't be in those positions as of next week anyway, because if they're playing against each other, I'm sure it's going to really mix up that group. We've got like I said, myself and Kieran on top of Group F, first, second, and third with 3 points each. And
you're playing against John Harris this week.
Oh, bring it on, John Harris! Yeah, he said it on Twitter. He said, "Bring it on." He's also having a bit of a shocker season as well. We got Group G, Sam Norris, who's also known as SMZ, Jordan W and Abdul, Suvar and not Tuvar, Jules Breach, Rakesh and Resi waiting to get some points, and back down to Group H, the last final group. Block FPL and Simon Bellamy in the best. Started off the season like a house on fire. Got within the top 20, I think, in the world. Simon Bellamy at one point. You can probably can correct me if you want. I think it was like 17th. He got to, maybe higher than that. And Block FPL doing really well there too.
Good fixture in Group H as well, Jason, because it's actually Block playing against Show Me the Money this weekend.
Oh, interesting.
You're going down to Group H, but remember, you've still got the other Group I to Group P.
Right, okay. I was just testing you guys. It's fine. It's like I don't even know how many groups there are. There's a lot of groups.
You've got Brew facing against Adam France this weekend.
Brew against Adam France and
So
Nymphria as well, looking to get some points there, and Dureco as well with 0, so that's going to be good. Evening Drazera, evening Brew, evening FPL Lad in chat, evening Sultan Saeed. What's this name here? Kyo Bokile. I don't know how to say it. I'm going to call him Kyo. Poch Academy, David Monday from Final Fantasy Football Scout. I was also about to say it, but I didn't. We got David Stoll for FPL Defender as well, with those points there on the board.
FPL tips to get off the mark.
Yes, yeah, it's early days.
Matt. Oh yeah, it's early days.
Early
but
days.
I think like what you say, Jason. What's good about this, and I'm not just bumming it up, obviously, but I think what is really good about it is that you can almost take ranking as overall ranking out the equation.
Absolutely,
altogether,
yeah,
because
definitely.
they're just head-to-head face-offs, so it's all to play for. Definitely all to play for.
All to play for, and then going to Group K. I can't believe I only thought there was 7 groups. Patrick McNally and FPL Boona, along with Lingard Youth with Tom Cantle doing well, starting off with winning ways, and Ray Joyce, Daksha, I should say, and Gary Horwood, also known as Harbour Boy, from Group K. They're looking to get some points on the board this game week. Who's playing who in Group K?
Group K, you have got Boona's playing Daksha.
Yeah.
You've got Ray Joyce playing Patrick, and Tom Cantle against Harbour Boy.
Very good. So a lot of these groups will be a lot different, I'd imagine. This time next week, we've got Group L, Vince Chapman topping the chart there with Andrew from Let's Talk FPL, Andy, with his team restored. We've got Rich Clark, Pookie Pies, from the Fantasy Football Hangover. And notable there, we've got Manchester Reds, James Bang, of course, who's putting up the £100 worth of Bitcoin. It's not 100 Bitcoin. There's a big difference, a massive difference.
Get that right.
Yeah. You're not going to get 100 Bitcoin, and you're not going to have to. With 100 Bitcoin, you can literally not have to worry about money ever again. Stas as well there, yet to register any points.
So you got first v last in this week. You got Vince playing against Manchester Reds this weekend.
Yes, it's all going to be mixed up. This is all going to change over the weekend, but I'm sure that Discord's going to be alive with chat about it over the game week.
And I think the other thing, just because there is a lot of people ask in Discord about how it all works, etc. And I think the good thing, if you hover over like a team name, the way FireTog set this up, you can actually link straight to that person's team on Live FPL, or the website, the main website.
Yeah, I think you can do. I did have it up a minute ago, but for some reason on the interactive thing that I've got here, I don't know how to get it up. But yeah, if you hover above the names, it gives you the link to their FPL teams, like you said. And someone's asking, hello, Mark.
There's a lot of tactics going on, Jason. That's what I'm seeing in Discord. There's a lot of people now not wanting to do reveal my teams.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I've kept it all quiet so far. Have I hit the wildcard button? Have I done a -20? Have I done something crazy? I don't know. But
2020 and Jason doing a -20. There's something in that.
But Mark Byrne in chat was, hello, what is this? Hello, Mark. If you're first time viewing us, this is one of the first parts of the show this evening. We're just glossing over something called the Elite FPL Champions League, which has been created by Daily Llama, who's with me on a call at the moment. A lot of community members in our community in this. It's a knockout competition, Champions League format, group stages, and then it goes to sudden death. And then we've got and we've got prizes for the winner. And the main thing really to sing and dance about is the fact that we've managed to get a few celebrity names to join us in this competition. The likes of Jules Breach from BT Sport. We've got other content creators. Let's Talk FPL. Andy's in it. We've got a whole host of names in here. The list is very, very long, and I'm not going to go through all of them. But yeah, so Group M, Mike Firetog, again, we talked about it. Nathan Bacon is another content creator. Nathan Bacon, guys, go check him out on YouTube. He's awesome. Aussie Boy's in there as well. And Bert from the Garage, Alan Wellsteed, they're doing well. So you can see Plavak, Mike Jones, also knows Firetog, doing really well there. And who's Firetog playing? I'm interested in knowing.
Firetog this week.
Yeah.
Firetog is playing against our very own Aussie Boy.
Aussie Boy. Well, best of luck, Aussie Boy. You're going to need it, my friend. Group N, we've got Kurt Yoy from the FPL Wildcats. And FPL Guerrero's in there. Nasty Balls is in there. Chaban's in there. Those two names, Filip Dimovsky and Filip Slavinsky.
Yeah, you couldn't script this, Straw, could you?
Literally, wow. I thought you'd accidentally copied and pasted the same name in. But yeah, Mitro's on fire, FPL Aguero and Sporting Incest. We got... I think that, again, any interesting matchups in Group N?
Group N, you've got... Nasty Balls is facing off against Philip.
Which one?
Oh, yeah. Better narrow it down a little bit. No, he's playing against FPL Aguero this week.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Group O. We've got quite a few people in here. We've got Davey FPL. For those of you on YouTube, should probably know who Davey FPL is. The content creator down in South Africa, doing very, very well. We got Dan Bull in this group too, and Gabriel Ropp. David is in there. David Kernahan's in there. Graham Bonfield, Fantasy Football Focus, and a celebrity in there along with Davey FPL and Dan. So, any matchups there in terms of...
The one that I'm calling out in that one is our very own Dan facing off against Gabriel Ropp.
Yeah, oh, very good. An interesting...
I think we're going to actually need to get some roving reporters out and about this weekend. There's actually a lot of decent matchups, to be honest.
Davey FPL's doing really well, isn't he? But he didn't register 3 points. It'd be interesting to see how close he was. Could you give me that? How far off was Davey from getting the 3 points? Was it a close match between him and his opponent?
Group Davey FPL.
Was he against David, 40, Gabriel, or Wayne? One of the three.
It was Gabriel Ropp. He was playing against 54 to 46.
Oh, okay. Bit of a difference there. We got Group P. We'll get through these and we'll go into the predictions. Group P, FPL Mechanic, Vishwa and Charlie Hain topping that group. Davey P, FPL Chef from Twitter, with his team Bean and Nasu all waiting to get scores on the board. Any interesting matchups in that group?
Davey P is playing against Charlie.
Oh, Charlie is... I think Charlie's going to do really well. I'm tipping Charlie, also known as Chicken Tikka Mo Salah, also known as Chicken Tikka, Charlie Bit My Finger, Gilfy Pleasures, One Rovers Vlogs, whatever you want to call him.
Hashtag Chris Packet.
The man with many names and many aliases, the guy that supports Blackburn Rovers. Somebody's got to do it. Somebody's got to support him. I think he's going to do well. I think he's going to go far in the competition. There you go. I've given you Charlie. I've given you the kiss of death, mate. Have we got any more groups? Is that it? That's it, isn't it? That's it.
You've done a fabulous job.
Brilliant. There we go. So I
think going forward, we'll just call out the key matchup, shall we?
don't know what you're on about.
But no, honestly, the buzz has been great. You'll see the banter that's going about in Discord. People that are new and are joining us new. Firetog and I have been spitting.
Wait, I said Blackburn. I said Blackburn Rovers. Sorry.
Did you?
Yeah, sorry. You didn't even correct me anyway. Everyone's correcting me, saying that it's Bristol. Did I honestly say Blackburn? Did I really?
Yes, if you did, I didn't even notice.
Well, Manchester Reds is in chat saying he's Bristol Rovers. Yeah, and it's even worse being Bristol. But yeah, okay, all right, okay, guys. I was just, yeah. I don't know why I said Blackburn. I do apologise. I'm sorry. Same colours, different region, completely. So let's move on to the predictions. If anyone wants to join us this evening on the score predictions, you've got literally a couple of minutes to join us. Come into Discord, come into the waiting room, and we will discuss the upcoming game week. Obviously, it kicks off on this Friday. Don't forget, it's Friday night kickoff, guys. It's a Friday night deadline. Do not forget that. There will be people that will be on Twitter going into meltdown because they didn't realise that Sheffield United were playing West Ham at 8 o'clock on, the deadline is at 7 o'clock. And I can't believe people still fall foul of that. I mean, come on, guys. Come on. Anurag says, great work on the website. Thank you. It wasn't that hard. Hello, we got Runner. How you doing? Hello, JC. And how do you decide what the key matchup is, says Harbour Boy?
Just point my finger at the spreadsheet.
There you go. We'll be there all day reading them all out, so we just choose one. A key matchup could be one, just could be a random one, but we've got plenty of game weeks, and so we'll try not to keep saying the same names. Obviously, a key matchup will probably involve a well-known community member and or celebrity. Say celebrity, it could be someone well-known off YouTube in the FPL community, or it could be someone like Jules Breach, who is actually a TV star. Can I get some motivation to make a -20? Says Anish. If you're asking me for motivation to make a -20, I'm probably the worst person this season to look at to get motivation to do a -20. How many of my -20s have paid off? Let's have a look at that. How many of my hits have paid off? Sterling or Aguero captain, says Tobias. Well, at the moment, my captaincy...
We've got stats on that, Jace. We've got stats on that.
Oh, brilliant. Well, I can't wait to hear them because I've got both of those. Or do I? Elite Champions League following is fire, especially for those who are not in it.
Just on that, Jason, there's been a lot of people that are newer members to Discord and newer members to Elite's channel. Firetog and I have been spitting backwards and forwards over the past week whilst it's been a bit of a rest period for us.
Yeah.
We're going to come up with something really, really good. We're going to look at almost like a format on how you would get into a Ryder Cup team, for example, in the golf. So you could be selected because you finished in the first 2 or 3 in the group this year. You could get in because of the Wheel of Fortune. You could get in because of your overall rank. And we're going to try and give our members plenty of ways to get into it next season.
I don't know if you are familiar with a loser's bracket and how a loser's bracket works. Mm-hmm. Are you familiar with that? Yeah. I think that if this gains more popularity, which I am hopeful and I'm sure it will do, next season we'll open it up again. There may well be more groups, but if we did a losers bracket, this is something which I really love. I love losers brackets because what I'm thinking of, we can have a losers bracket where teams that got knocked out go into a separate competition, and then the winner of that competition can then face off against the winners in the knockout stages of the main competition. But anyway, that's something which we may do if it gets crazy and like 500 people want to join. And of course, if 500 people want to join, Llama, best of luck to you, my friend.
I'll just hand it all over to Firetop. Fun with it.
We'll probably need a robot that can scrape the results off automatically, and someone with coding and programming knowledge to do something like that. But what we got here sounds like the drop down from the Champions League to Europa. Essentially what it is. But instead of you going into the Europa final to win the Europa League, you've got the chance of going back into the Champions League if you reach the final of the Europa instead of, you get the chance. You get the gist of it. You get the gist of it.
If only Scotland had opportunities like that in their competitions.
And talk about Firetog. He's actually in the waiting room. Firetog, I see you in the waiting room. I've called out for someone to come on and join us on the show tonight. I can't think of anyone better. And I know that Drazera is there too. Drazera, we'd love to have you on. In fact, screw it, we're going to get you on as well. Drazera, can you please mute the stream, please? Thank you. Good evening, Firetog. How are you doing?
Hey, how's it going? Good.
Yeah, Firetog, I've thanked you on air. I'm going to thank you in person. Lama's told me how much effort and time you've put into this. I am useless at spreadsheets. I don't even know how they work. They just look like cells of information to me, and that's essentially all they are. But I don't have a clue how to do a formula, and well done. Thank you ever so much. We've got Pete Smith in the chat as well. Dan Bull, are you getting in Phil Jones now that Maguire is out? ? Jones was amazing for United the other day. Well, anyone here thinking about possibly taking a punt on Phil Jones, after that performance?
I could tell you where I would punt Phil Jones.
Yeah.
I certainly wouldn't be into my FPL team.
Down to Bristol Rovers. But anyway,
or Blackburn.
Or Blackburn Rovers, yeah, absolutely. Well, good evening, both of you, Firetog and Drazera. I was just going to bring Firetog. I see both of you there. So we haven't got Steve-O this evening as unfortunately he's got early to wake up early for work. Are you guys happy to join us just to go through this game week's predictions and talk about what we all think that the results might be?
Yep.
Sweet, awesome. And what's the weather like over in in the paradise, Firetog?
It's not great. Cloudy. It's not brilliant. Not paradise today.
Oh, not paradise today, but still got the palm trees and stands to go with it. So I'm not jealous. No, it's fine. My muddy garden's got nothing in comparison with that. No. But anyway, let's move on then. So evening, Drazera, how are you doing? Drazera, can you hear me? Earth to Drazera, how you doing?
This is the quietest I've ever heard, Dre.
He's probably gone to make himself a cup of tea, hasn't he? That's what he's done. Drazera, are you there?
Yes, I am.
There we go. Did you run off somewhere?
Just a bit, whatchamacallit, it's a bit, I can't hear very, very well on my laptop, so I'm going to switch to mobile and see if that works, if that's alright.
Okay, buddy, no worries. I'm just going to move you out and I'll drag you back in. Right, so let's start off with the Friday evening game. Sheffield United host West Ham. As I said, I've been out of the loop of football for quite some time now. In terms of this week, I've been kind of relaxing, trying not to think about it. And I've went on to Reddit, went on to certain forum sites, and been scouring, see what people are talking about. This fixture, Lundstrom, is going to be a popular pick, I think, for a lot of people that own him still. People in chat saying 2-0 to Sheffield United. People going with a win for Sheffield United here. Anurag to Gabriel, One Rovers Vlogs. We've got Nasty Balls, Vince Chapman, all going with wins for Sheffield United. I'm going to start with Firetog. Firetog, this fixture, Sheffield United versus West Ham, do you see goals?
Yeah, I've got 2-0 too. I've got all mine already penciled in. So yeah, 2-0 for me on that one.
Okay, 2-0 to Sheffield United, are you?
Yeah, 2-0 to Sheffield United. Even though West Ham won 4-0 again, it was Bournemouth they beat, so I still think Sheffield United can hold them.
Oh, interesting. 2-0. And Drazera, I'll bring him in now. Daily Llama, your thoughts? Oh, he's gone now. I think he's gone. Daily Llama, what's your thoughts on this game? Chat saying 1s and 2-0s.
Right, so this game, I have looked, there's only one game really to reference it against. The last time they played, they finished 1 each with Snodgrass and Musette, the goal scorers. I don't think this is going to be a big goal scoring fest either. And I think it's like, yeah, welcome back to the Premier League, folks. We're going to put in a right belting game to start on the Friday night. I think it's going to finish 1-1.
1-1, okay, interesting. I think this could be one of those games where people will be happy to own a Sheffield United defender. Will it be Lundstrom? Will the double up or triple up of Sheffield United that some people may have pay off? Do you own Fleck? Do you own Baldock? Do you own Lundstrom? I'm going to go with a 1-0. I'm not thinking 2. I'm going to go with 1. I'm going to be a little bit more conservative. With hopefully...
There's like 811s in the chat there.
Say again.
There's like 811s.
Oh my god! I thought someone was spamming 1-1, but it is actually different people. Sean saying 1-1, Daniel Nash 1-1, Michael Svedin 1-1, Cameron saying 1-1. We got a runner 1-1. Wow.
Bench Lundstrom then.
And I think Steve-O, are you right in saying, Jason? Steve-O, being Steve-O, will probably do his own stream, but he's also got his predictions there. You want me to read them out for?
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead and let us know what Steve-O's prediction is on this one.
Went 1-1 as well.
Steve-O's also gone 1-1. There you go. So I tried to drag you in, Drazera, but you keep disconnecting when I drag you in. So we will hopefully sort that out. If not, then you can come on another time. I'll try one more time, Drazera. Drazera, can you hear me? Drazera, can you hear me?
Yep, I can.
Okay. Okay, cool. Sheffield United versus West Ham. Your thoughts on this game, your prediction? He's gone. Right, moving on. Let's move on to the Saturday fixtures. So we get this game out of the way. A lot of people going with a Sheffield United win there and a draw. There's been a lot of people drawing. We got the first game. Firetalk, how are you doing on the leaderboard on the predictions, by the way? You've been...
I was doing pretty well in December until I think the last week. I think I came 4th in December.
Oh, you've been doing pretty well.
Just behind Steve-O. And January didn't start off well. Terrible. I think I got like 3 or 4 points in January, so I'm way behind those guys in the January leaderboard.
I'm actually doing okay, I think. Well, I was. Maybe I'm not now. I'm 34th. I'm doing all right. Lino. Oh no, yeah, January. Sorry, I have to switch.
I'm 12th overall. I'm 12th.
Let's find out. What am I on January? Because I can't switch to January for some weird reason. Lino's doing amazing overall. He's just a freak of nature. And
I'm second, Jason. Second with 13.
Second, I'm second in January. Brilliant. Lino, if you are watching this on the replay, your merchandise is being dispatched this week. Okay, it's just been a manic week for me planning a wedding. I wouldn't recommend doing it at short notice. Just saying. Let's go back to the predictions.
No, Lino's 11th in got 11th. He's 5th in January already. So he won December and he's 5th in January.
I swear to God, we need to get Lino. Anyone that does accumulators, okay, or proper bets, get friends of Lino. Okay, Lino knows something that a lot of people don't know. Something with that guy. Right, so let's move on to the Saturday's fixtures. The early kickoff is Crystal Palace at home to Arsenal. Obviously, we're not going to have news before the deadline of possible leaks for this because of the Friday evening game. We've got quite a few games. We've got 7 games here. Your predictions on this one, Firetog? Palace hosting Arsenal.
Yeah, I've got Palace 0, Arsenal 2.
Palace 0, Arsenal 2. We've got people in chat. Michael Svedin going 2-0 to Arsenal, 1-0 to Arsenal, Drazera. I don't know what happened, Drazera. You keep disconnecting. We got a runner 2-0 Arsenal, clean sheet for Arsenal. Whoa!
I think they might have turned the corner now. They looked pretty good the other day.
Well, they seemed... Let's not talk about it. Daniel Nash saying 2-1 Arsenal keeping a clean sheet. Do you think Zaha might do something in this game? 1-1. 3-1 Arsenal. Sean says 2-1 Arsenal. Sultan Saeed Anish with a 3-1. And is anyone actually going with a Crystal Palace win? I'm trying to even things out slightly here and see if I can. No, I don't think anyone's going with a Crystal Palace win. At best, a draw. So maybe this game week, I'm thinking of Crazy Jack. I'm thinking people maybe owning Lacazette, Aubameyang. Aguero's completely different.
So Steve-O on this one's went 1-0 to Arsenal as well. I've got my pucker pad out here, as Steve-O would be very, very proud of me. The data over your last few games, though, has thrown up a 2-2 each draws and a 3-2 win to Palace when they were away from home. Aubameyang's had 2 goals in the last 3 games, and Milivojevic, I'm so happy I pronounced that correctly.
Yes.
He's had 3 pens in 3 games.
Oh, he's banned right now, isn't he?
So
he got sent off in the FA Cup game. So
well, it's a bit of a shame. But is there
So
gonna
don't
be
get him in.
Yeah, someone will go and get him in now.
So the Llama, I brought him in, but he was red. What does that mean?
But yeah, I think there will be goals in it. I've went for a 2 each draw.
Say again.
I've went for a 2 each draw.
2-2.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Okay. I'm like a lot of people in chat. I'm going to go with a win to Arsenal. Do they keep a clean sheet? Do they score more than one? I think they probably will get a couple. And you know what? I'm going to go with a flock. I'm going to go with a crowd. I'm going to go 2-0 to Arsenal too. There you go. Right. So moving on to the 3 o'clock games. If Steve was here, he'd be able to give us his history, but he's not, unfortunately.
I can give you it though.
Go on then.
I have it all here. So,
Go on then.
But I'm only looking at the last few games, obviously. So the last time they faced off, it was 4-2 to Chelsea. They've then had a 2 each draw, and then the third result that I took down was 4-0 to Chelsea. So
History's not really on Burnley's side then.
it's not really Pulisic. Bruno's going to love these pronunciations.
Pulisic. What do you call him? Pulisic.
Listen, it's just the pulse that's going through my veins just now.
Pulisic.
Pulisic?
Hat trick the last time he was out.
Right.
So that's your today. I'm going to 2-0.
Hand up in chat if you still got Pulisic, guys.
I got rid of him last week. I held on to him until.
Yeah, I think the crickets may be chirping away at the moment, but people in chat saying 2-2, 2-1 to Chelsea, 3-0 Chelsea, 2-0 Chelsea, 2-1 Chelsea, 1-1 Jacko says. No hands here. Nope. I got rid last week. People all saying, yeah, no. Michael said 2-0 Chelsea.
Steve-O's obviously back in his own team because he's went 2-0 Chelsea as well.
What did Steve-O say for the Palace Arsenal game?
1-0
to Arsenal. So he went with a 1-0. So he's back in. Sorry, Steve-O's prediction is for Chelsea.
2-0 to Chelsea.
2-0 to Chelsea. So even Steve-O thinks that Chelsea are going to score a couple. Tammy Abraham owners, are you going to be happy? Actually, do I owe Phil 10 quid? Don't tell him. Chelsea Burnley. I'm going to go for a. I don't know. I don't think it's going to be that. I'm going to be 1-0. 1-0 to Chelsea on this one.
Interesting. Just a low scoring game.
Yeah, I've been quite conservative with my predictions so far. You writing these predictions down, by the way, Llama? Yeah. We've all predicted, haven't we?
No, I haven't.
Oh, Firetog, sorry, mate. Sorry.
It's all right.
Go on, buddy. What do you want? What's
2-0 Chelsea.
Oh, Jesus, there was no point waiting, Firetog. You were just going with the crowd anyway.
Yeah. It was
I'm just going with the obvious result.
Yeah. I just need to stick.
I need to get one.
I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick with Firetog, Llama, me. Firetog, Llama, me, so I don't forget. Okay, so Firetog, next game, Everton at home to Brighton. Your thoughts in this game? People bringing in Calvert-Lewin. Is that a good option?
Well, he's looked pretty good until the last week. He didn't look so good in the FA Cup, but he has been on fire. Yeah, for the price, it's definitely a good option. You need to downgrade to get some money for your double game week Liverpool upgrade. There's some way to get some funds out of your strike force.
Well, a close friend of mine was suggesting a downgrade from Aguero to Calvert-Lewin. I thought it was a really good idea. I think it. Anyway,
have you done it though?
Who knows? Who knows?
Only thing, I think Everton have got like 4 really good fixtures, then they go on a bad run again. Mm-hmm. Where if you look at somebody like Mopé, he's got a longer run, so you're saving yourself potentially another transfer down the line by going Mopé over Calvert-Lewin for about the same price.
You've been looking up my team.
I think Everton are a better team though. To be honest with you, that's the only thing. Right, so Daily Llama. Everton and Brighton. Oh, yeah, Firetog. Yeah, what's his prediction, mate? Sorry, dude.
1-0. 1-0 Everton.
1-0 to Everton. Who's scoring?
Richarlison.
Richarlison, not okay. 2-1 Everton, says Jacko. Tommy Gun 2-1. One Rivers Logs 2-1. We got a runner 2-1. Nasty Balls 2-all. Babin says 2-0. Tobias says 2-all. We got 3-1 from Nish in chat. Llama.
So Steve-O has also went 2-1 to Everton, as am I, and I swear I ain't looked at Steve-O's results before I put mine in. The last time the two teams met, it was 3-2 to Brighton. Brighton have also had a 1-0 win, and Everton's last time was last season, I believe, when it was 3-1 to Everton with Richarlison scoring twice, so Firetalk could be onto something there. The last time they did face, though, it was DCL and Mopai that were both on the score sheet with 1 apiece. So yeah, I think there will be goals from both teams, so that's why I'm sticking with my 2-1 prediction to Everton.
Llama says 2-1. I'm going to go with a 3-1 win in this game for Everton. There we go. Have I brought in Calvert-Lewin after saying that? Who knows?
we can assume you have. If you probably pushing up the score on the Everton game.
There we go. Favoritism, guys.
How it works.
We've got next a favourite captaincy pick in Jamie Vardy up against let's be honest, the whipping boys Southampton. They've shown a bit more of a fight, but I still think they're going to get whipped in this game. Leicester versus Southampton. Firetag, go ahead. Give me your thoughts on this one.
I've got 2-0 to Leicester, but it has to be said, I heard somewhere, I read somewhere, Southampton have the second best goal record right now, only behind Liverpool for something like the last 4 games. So I'm not expecting Leicester to pile of goals in. But I'm not expecting Southampton to score either. I've benched Ings in my team this week. Just don't tell Aussie boy.
So you're suggesting disappointment for Soyuncu owners, Chilwell owners?
So Leicester's going to win 2-0. So
2-0. Okay. A clean sheet for Leicester.
Southampton's defense has improved a lot, so I'm not expecting Leicester to go crazy like the 9-0 they had.
I think they're going to get. I think that this is going to be a blitz. I do. I've got this feeling. So there you go. 2-0 to Leicester, says Firetog. We've got 3-0 Leicester, 2-1 to Leicester. Nasty Ball saying 1-0. Dereco saying 2-0, says Rob in chat. Good evening, Nasu. How you doing? 2-1 Southampton. Don't bench Ings. Is Maddison okay? Says Antonio. Anyone got any news on Maddison?
He looked fine.
That's a good point. He went off with a bit of a sore head.
Yeah, he got a bang. It wasn't against Mings' side.
I think he'd be fine.
Hip. Yeah, I think he'll be fine too.
Yeah. So listen out for team news, of course, tomorrow. So Llama, your thoughts on this game?
So I'm definitely wanting to get a VAR call in here because I've just checked Steve-O's prediction, which is a 2-1 win to Leicester.
Right.
Which is the exact same as what I've put as well for this, and I've been taken into.
Maybe are you subconsciously copying his predictions?
I think he uses the same website as I obviously used before I came on the night. Last time the two faced, it was a bit one-sided with a 9-0 win to Leicester. Vardy and Perez both scoring 3 times each. The time before that, though, it was Southampton that won with Ward-Prowse on the score sheet. There's been a 0-0 draw and another 2-1 to Leicester. I don't think this is going to be a riot. Maddison, I think, as you say, I think he will be okay, but he did come off with a slight headache, but a few paracetamol and he'll probably be fine. But having watched the game, and I don't know if you guys watched the game, Leicester look absolutely gubbed at the moment. I just don't see a riot in this game, so that's why I'm sticking with my 2-1.
Interesting. I'm gonna go with a standout score prediction here. This would be fun, wouldn't it? 4-1. 4-1 to Leicester.
Okay.
I bet all those Jamie Vardy captains are going to be happy with that.
Well, that's the thing. When you look at the last 4 times that they've played, Vardy did get that hat-trick alongside Perez, as I was saying, but apart from that, he ain't done anything. And he didn't score
until the 70th minute in that game, did he?
Yeah, exactly. So I just think they looked gubbed during the week there, the other night there, against a Villa. And I think Southampton are playing defensively not too bad at the moment.
Yeah, they kind of turned the corner, haven't they, Southampton?
Yeah,
but I still think
Danny Ings is the one that's on form just now.
I still think that they can be exploited at the back. I think at home, I think they're looking to bounce back after that game against Villa and get a comprehensive result. Yeah, I'm happy with the 4-1. But interesting. Now we move on to the game of the Saturday. It's got to be said. Everyone's going to be watching this game, other than people in the UK who aren't at the game.
I just want to see what Phil Jones does this weekend.
Phil Jones, yeah,
he always lights up my days.
Oh, so yes. Let's start with Firetog. Man United at home to Norwich. What's the score going to be?
Well, I have Rashford as my captain. I have Marshall as my captain, and I have Rashford. And I'm really not. I don't expect there's going to be a rout in this. I think Norwich is going to put a low block in, and Man United are going to get frustrated. But I'm going for 2-0, but I'm hoping for a lot more.
Very, very good. We've got people in the chat saying 5-0 United, 3-2 United, 2-2, 5-0, Jacko 1-1, Dre 0, 3-0, 3-2 United is Nasty Balls. Josh is saying it's Vardy's birthday, 1 goal, 2 assists and 2 goals scored by Perez. Going back to the other ones. Odds on Phil Jones' yellow card is a 1.02. Says never win FPL. So yeah, pretty good there then.
Didn't Phil Jones pull his hamstring when he was playing the other day?
I think it was cramp. I don't think it was hamstring. I think it was cramp. If it was hamstring, he wouldn't have continued like he continued. He would have gone.
They'd have 3 subs already, right? At that point.
But he would have come off. It was a hamstring, regardless of the fact that they had 3.
He's not played in that long. That he was probably just running about with heavy legs.
Yeah, well, I think the commentator actually said at the time, Phil Jones looking a little bit blowy at the moment, so puffing quite a bit, and then all of a sudden, he starts to cramp up, and well, let's be honest with you, it was quite it wasn't the most flattering performance from Phil Jones in his United career. Let's put it that way. And I'm not just talking about the photos. With the live action was bad enough. Lama, your thoughts on this game?
So the last 2 away games that they've played against each other, it's Man United that have came out on top with a 3-1 win and a 1-0 win, with Martial scoring twice and Rashford scoring once. However, the last time they played against each other at Old Trafford, it was actually Norwich that ended up winning 2-1. I've went a bit boring here, even as a Man United supporter. I've went for a 1-1 draw, and I think we'll struggle even to get a 1-1 draw.
Is this what we've resorted to now as United fans? Like, just be like, yeah, we're just not going to be able to beat Norwich.
See, when Solskjaer comes out in the news and says, "We've got good news for you guys, we're going to get our defender back that we've put out on loan," he'll be like a new signing. Yeah, thanks for that, Ollie. I can't wait. I'm looking forward to it.
I think without making too much of a point on it, I think Ollie is a little bit out of his depth, and the fact that I know he's a nice guy, he's a really, really nice guy, but I really, really like to see managers literally come out and say it as it is, and he's scared to kind of like say it as it is, and it's like excuses after excuses and a smile on his face, and it's like, hello, that's appalling right now.
Ashley Young isn't obviously the best player there by any stretch of the imagination, but even when Ashley Young turns around and says, "Nah, you're all right, guys, I'm going to just look elsewhere and get paid from someone else," that's got to tell you something.
The glory days are over. Man United versus Norwich. Final thoughts.
I've went a 1-1 draw. Steve-O, just so you're aware, has went for a 2-0 home win to Man United.
2-0 to United. Same as Firetog then. I think we'll beat them. I think we'll beat Norwich. Will David De Gea get a customary goal scored against him? Probably. I'm going to go with 2-1 to Man United.
Nice.
Sorry, Wan-Bissaka owners. All 4 of you. Wolves at home to Newcastle. Firetog. Have you got any Wolves assets in your team?
I have Traore, and he's playing for me over Ings this week.
Ooh, okay, yeah, okay.
I'm going to do a Jason. I'm going to go for a nice big score for this one because
you own Traore.
Traore, exactly. 4-0. I'm going for Wolves.
4. Okay.
Newcastle have, unless the guys are coming back, they had like the whole back line out injured this last week. I think a lot of them were like 50-50. If you go on FPL, they're all 50-50 for coming back, but they could potentially be without most of their starters this week. So
interesting. We got the guys in the chat saying 1-1. Vince Chapman 2-0 for the Cape FPL. Good evening, the Cape FPL. Good evening. Michael Svedin, Tobias, Sean Babu Ram. 2-0 Wolves, says Sean. 1-0 Tobias. Michael saying 3-0 to Wolves. Everyone's going with a Wolves win. A lot of people are. A couple of draws littered around here and there, but 2s and 3-0s being mentioned in chat. Some 4-0s. A 5-0 from Anish in chat. 3-0 says Daniel Nash.
I think Anish is loving this 5-0. I think that's what he's predicted for every single game so far.
Never Win FPL says, would you guys play Martial or Traore? For me, it would be Martial.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Definitely. I'm playing both, but definitely if I had to choose.
Yeah.
I'm captain in Martial, so he's my top player I've got.
So Steve-O has went a 2-0 win to Wolves in this game.
Cool. What was your prediction?
Well, when you look at the last 3 times these teams have faced each other, you have had a 1-1 draw, a 1-1 draw, and a 2-1 win to Wolves. Jimenez hasn't been on the score sheet in any of those 3 games, so I am going also for a 1-1 draw.
I'm going to go with a 1-0 win to Wolves at home. A very drab with a game with lots of chances of Wolves that they don't take. Yes, maybe Jimenez getting involved, maybe Traore, but it's only the 1 goal for me in that game. Tottenham host Liverpool in the evening kickoff on Saturday. Firetog, this game, is it going to be a belter? Is it going to be this?
I have no clue what team is going to turn up for Mourinho this week. So, who knows? I've gone 2-0 to Liverpool, but I have no idea, to be fair. You could get a decent display from Sonny and those guys, or they could all just not turn up like the last few weeks.
Well, the defence for Tottenham, I think, are going to be up against it. I think they're going to be up against the wall, and it's going to be very tough for them. Daily Llama, your thoughts in this game?
So first of all, Steve-O's predicted a 4-0 win for Liverpool this match. When you look at the last 4 times that they've faced off against each other, it's Liverpool that have won all 4 occasions with a 2-1 win, a 2-0 win. In fact, 3 2-1 wins and a 2-0 win. All in favour of Liverpool. Salah's had a couple of penalties thrown in there. The rest of the goals have been kind of split between the teams.
Spurs beat them 4-0 not so long ago. Was it 2 years ago, a year ago?
I'm only looking at last year.
Oh, okay.
I know Harry Kane, of course, in that team for Tottenham.
Yeah, that's what I was just about to say. Kane's out until April.
Yeah, they reckon April.
So, yeah, 2-0 I'm going. Liverpool.
2-0 to Liverpool. People in chat saying 2-1 Liverpool, 4-2 to Liverpool, 3-0 Gabriel de Rop. We've got 4-0 in chat there. Dan Ball saying 2-0 Liverpool. 4-1 a few years back to Tottenham. Suggested by obviously Fartog mentioning that as well. 9-0 says David Hackinson there. I'll be very, very shocked. But I did see somebody say in chat, Mane versus Salah. Who?
This is it.
That is the million dollar question now. Honestly, it really, really is. Form wise and reliability and consistency wise is Mane for me. But in that the amount of chances that Salah gets in a game, if he can start to get more clinical, more decisive, I wouldn't say panic, but just literally just be the player that we've seen him in previous seasons. I think he could get an absolute haul in this game. I really, really do. I own Salah. Am I brave enough to captain him? I don't know.
He's on penalties as well, and I'm not so sure if Milner's are there or thereabouts. So
I think that safety, Mane, but I think the ceiling for Salah is potentially higher. So if you want a bit of a risk, go with Salah, with the hopefully reaping a higher reward. But if you want to play it safer and you're choosing between the two, it'd be Mane. But there are other obviously captaincy picks this game week. We talked about Leicester with Vardy. We talked about Man United perhaps with Rashford or Martial. We talked about Arsenal with Aubameyang. Maybe even somebody looking to go crazy with a Chelsea picking Tammy Abraham, home to Burnley. People there going with a few goals for Chelsea. There's a lot of going around, but Liverpool in this game, I think they're gonna score big. I think as a Port Aurier owner, I think that this could be 3 or 4 goals, 3 or 4. I'm not going to go 9. I'm going to go 9-0. I'm going to go 3-0 to Liverpool. 3-0. Maybe Gomez can get his first goal this season. Massive evening for me as I'm on a wild card to save my season, says Daniel Nash. Well, I wish I could share with what I'm doing, but I'm keeping my cards close to my chest. I'm not. Anyway, let's quickly move on
into our Sunday games.
To our Sunday games, of course. 2 games on the Sunday. Super Sunday. Is it a Super Sunday?
Not really.
not really.
Bournemouth, Watford and Villa? Hardly.
Bournemouth and Watford kick off at 2:00 on the Sunday. Firetog, your thoughts in this game? Are Bournemouth going to turn a corner against a Watford team? A Watford team that seems to be
right now.
Getting better and better, aren't they?
Yeah, I can't see Bournemouth after coming after that 4-0 against West Ham. I've got 2-0 to Watford. I just got no faith in Bournemouth.
2-0 to Watford. Interesting.
I know an admin person that's in our Discord that's got a lot of faith in Bournemouth.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I'll leave it there.
Where have they got this blind faith from? That's the question.
I have no idea.
Well,
I don't think he's much idea either.
Dan Bull seems to have faith in Bournemouth as well, saying 2-1. I know that Dan's got a bit of a soft spot for Bournemouth. Maybe his heart is saying that over his brain. Bournemouth, I think, are gonna struggle. Daylama, what's your thoughts?
So starting off with Steve-O, he's went for a 2-1 win to Watford in this match.
Another win for Watford for Steve, okay.
Looking at the last 3 fixtures, it's been a 0-0, it's been a 3 each, and it's been a 4-0 away win for Bournemouth. With Big Drake scoring 2, that's Dine, for those that don't know. Wilson's had a couple, and so's King. And I wonder if Buna has seen these, and that's why he's brought Wilson in this game week. My prediction on this game will just be a 1-out draw.
1-1 draw. I'm going to go 2-1 to Watford in this fixture. I think Watford are proving that they are no pushovers now, and Bournemouth will continue on their downward slope. Moving on to the Villa versus Man City game. A lot of people having 1 or 2 Man City players in their teams, maybe even a triple up. I'm hopeful for some goals in this game for Man City. People own De Bruyne, people own Sterling. Did anyone bring in Jesus by any chance after obviously the minutes from Aguero? This week, I can see goals in it. Firetog.
Yeah, I have it as 1-4. Villa 1, City 4, but I'm actually going to change that because I haven't seen Villa against Leicester. They put up a good defense there. There were a lot of shots at them, but they were pretty sturdy. So I'm going to drop it to 1-3.
Grealish having a really good game there as well. I don't own Grealish. Missed that boat. So what was it? Sorry, what was it?
3-1 to City.
3-1 to City. Okay, 3-1 to City. Cool. Daylama.
Yeah, Jason, I'm on the same boat as you, pal, I'm afraid. I missed the Grealish boat. Steve-O's went 3-0 to City. Looking at the last time they've met, you're giving Villa nothing. City have beat them 3-0, 4-0 twice, and there was also a nothing each draw thrown in there. I think this is where the best captaincy pick could come from, which is a bit controversial considering your other options that are out there. But Aguero's got a couple, Sterling's got 3, KDB's been involved in pretty much everything that's been scored. If it was me and I was seriously wanting to go a bit differential with my captain pick and I had Aguero in my team, that's probably where I'd be sticking the armband.
Yeah.
Well, let's just
ask... My prediction, is 3-0 to City.
Brilliant. 3-0 to City. Villa there on the end of a convincing defeat. Guys in chat, do you think Aguero is going to start in this game? Let us know in chat. Y for yes, N for no. Will Aguero start the game? Will he play 60 minutes or more? Y in chat for yes, N for no. Let's see what you guys are saying on that one. Let's have a look. We've got Y, N. We've got a few Y's coming in now. Josh, Tahir, Nasty Balls. Sorry, we've got come on, bring me some more Y's. Give me some more Y's. I like that. So maybe me holding on to Aguero for this long is going to pay me back. Right. So let's move on to my prediction in this game. I'm going to go with a. Yeah, you're going to laugh because you're just going to say it's Cusco and Aguero. 5-0 Man City. Boom.
Yeah, that's because you own Aguero.
Yeah, it is.
and they're all going to Sterling.
Well, I own him as well, so it's all right. As long as Aguero gets his assists on a few.
All going to Mendy, you sold him.
Oh, God, don't tell me. But yeah, the Mendy fiasco. But this... Stambles doing the admin for me. Give the stream a like, guys, if you're enjoying, or else, he says. If you're new here, hit the sub button, hit the bell button, be notified when we go live. Normally we've got Steve here with us as well, doing his predictions, his history that we value him for, and also we get a guest on. We've got 2 on this evening, and that's all the score predictions for this game week. Game week 22. Excited, guys, for game week 22. Some nice matchups. Should hopefully be some goals in this game week.
I hope so, but then when you look over our predictions, 2 games where we think there's going to be a lot of goals. That's the City and the Liverpool game.
Wow, yeah, it's not every week we get the predictions right, but yeah, let's hope there's some nice goals for people with. The likes of the
forward to just a nice relaxed weekend with a crate of beer, and I'll just watch it happen. So no, I'm looking forward to the weekend. Jacko's got a theory I just want to quickly bring up. Okay.
Jacko says, my theory is that Pep didn't play either midweek because he wanted to see how Villa played this week. Because they defended deep against Leicester, Aguero is likely to start over Jesus. I hope you are right, Jacko. I really, really do. Got my captaincy on KDB, says Tahir in chat. Interesting. So, guys, have you got your teams ready in the team screenshots? I'm going to quickly bring up Steve-O's team. Let's quickly have a look. You've got a couple there. I think the community team. I think the first one was the community team. So the community team did a free transfer. Yeah.
They took Aurier out and they put Gomez in. So that'll be the first team that you see.
Let me just bring it up. One moment. Right, so, let's move that over a second. Right, so this is the community team, guys, the Elite FPL community team. What was the transfer, Lama?
So we took out Aurier and brought in Gomez.
Okay, I think that's a bit of an upgrade there for this game week. I think Gomez is a good point. I own Gomez. Is a cheap way into that Liverpool defence, a bit of an enabler. Or maybe picking up the same points of the likes of Van Dijk and Robertson. Captain and Vardy, safe pick there. And I think the community team's looking pretty decent there. I think the only person really who's going to do any harm against City for Villa is Grealish. So you've got them there. He's got the Ali pick for against home to Liverpool. I don't think Ali's going to do anything, but who knows? Everyone else seems to be pretty good. A bit of a pick there with Callum Wilson.
Yeah, I think Buna might have tampered with their team then.
Benching of Lundstrom. That's interesting. Benching Lundstrom.
That's weird.
I think I would play Lundstrom over Ali. Or Grealish. I don't know.
Yeah, I would probably take Grealish out and put Lundstrom in.
Or Wilson. Wilson hasn't scored in months, has it? I mean, 2 months since he scored.
But you guarantee that the one moment you do take him out,
what can I say? The community teams is a lot better ranked than what I am.
Probably me too.
Interesting. So, guys, again, that was a transfer. Can we have the option for the community to change that lineup in the Discord, or is it time over now?
I think if the guys act on it pretty fast, we might be able to.
There you go, guys. If you want to swap Lundstrom for Grealish, get into Discord. Let your voices be heard. Just
give Resi Daisy some work to do.
There we go. Give him some work to do. Right, that's community. Let's bring up Steve-O's team. This is Steve-O's team. He did a -4. Do you want to read it out?
Yeah, so he's went and done a -4, and this was to get. And he's made it very clear. This -4 was to get Salah in his team.
Oh, he's done the crazy. He's Captain Salah.
So he's done a -4 to get Salah. It's included Rashford and Jimenez out.
Wait
there. Rashford, Jimenez, Ali out. DCL, Ings, and Salah in.
Presumably, he's going to be bringing Lundstrom off the bench there, and not playing Williams as well. Or is that his plan?
Hey, who knows? Steve-O doesn't even know.
Yeah, interesting. Williams. He's been lucky with those Williams points, so maybe he's just going to continue that luck. I like the transfers. I think they're very positive. Calvert-Lewin, Ings, got Salah as his captain. He's brought him in from -4 and captained him. Interesting. All I can say, ladies and gentlemen, me and Steve will not, if it stays the same as this, we will not have the same captain this game week. And of course, Steve-O ahead of me by 9 points? I don't know. I don't. Maybe very, very narrow lead on me at the moment. Obviously, I lost my spot to him last game week. I want to get it back. My chance.
Depends if you took any hits.
Oh, of course it does. Yes, absolutely. Or does it? Maybe Aguero will get 4 goals and I captain him. There we go.
Exactly.
That's interesting. Captain, what's your thoughts, guys, on that? What's your thoughts on?
That's a pretty strong team. He's all set now for a double game week as well.
Yeah, I like that. And he's also got he's good enablers that he's got sat on the bench in Holgate and Lundstrom as well.
Yeah, he's got the players that we've been talking about.
Donker's always going to just tick away, isn't he, the rest of the season anyway? So he's almost. I don't know if he's any money in the bank, but he's almost a goalkeeper away from a bench boost, depending on the fixtures.
Interesting. I like the moves. Very positive moves. Very calculated moves and popular moves. Let's be honest with you. Calvert-Lewin has been mass transferred in. Thank you, Stephen and Paulo for the subscribe there. Much appreciated. Yeah, Steve-O, I hope your captaincy fails. That's all I'm going to say.
You'd be loving it.
Let's have a look to say hello to Daily Llama's bag of spanners. Have you changing your team name to that, by the way?
No, that's just literally what this team is, though. It's a bag of spanners.
And you're using that extension, aren't you? That Chrome extension that gives you all the fixtures. For anyone with a microscope, he's got Henderson in goal. Soyuncu, Alexander-Arnold, Lundstrom. He's playing Lundstrom. De Bruyne, Mane, Perez. Salah and Moutinho. So you'll be hoping for another hat-trick from Perez then against Southampton. Ings and Vardy. Are you confident with this team? You call them a bunch of spanners. Are you confident in this game week with this team?
I was been talking about this earlier. Perez I've brought in because of his recent form, and they've still got a decent run of fixtures. If Perez is still playing alongside Jamie Vardy up top, then I think that may pay off. Moutinho I was always wanting to have someone in from Wolves for the next couple of fixtures. And Ings, that was another boat that I went and missed. So I thought, well, I'm sinking anyway, might as well get Ings back in. But when you look at their fixtures for about the next, 7 game weeks after the next kind of couple, they're all pretty much green. So I had to just
Yeah,
get
you
Ings
can't
in anyway at this rate.
Apart from Liverpool.
The way I've went about it, though, is I wanted to get my triple Liverpool in early. My team value isn't that great, or it hasn't been that great, but I feel now, okay, there's a couple of players that I'm happy to change, but I'm on no hit January. So I ain't taking any hits over the course of this month. So by having this team, I feel that players like your Trents, your Manes, your Salahs, your Ings, your Mopais, however you want to pronounce it, I think all their values are going to go up over the next 2 to 3 weeks, especially with a double game week coming round the corner for Liverpool. I've now got them all sat in my team quite happily now. So yeah, there's a couple of people that I can swap about, but I think they've got decent fixtures as things stand over the next 2. So in a couple of weeks, when I've got my 2 free transfers again, I might swap them around. I might get a David Silva in there instead of Perez and drop Moutinho down to Dendoncker. Might do something like that. But yeah, I think, I'm not saying my team's brilliant by any stretch of the imagination, but it was more a value thing. I felt that if I just sat on it all the way up to game week 24, I wouldn't have had a team looking like that with a triple Liverpool attack, which is what
I have to say it, Llama. Do you not feel that you're kind of handicapping yourself in a way by suggesting in advance that you will not be taking any hits in the entire month of January? I mean, are you that happy with your team? Are you that set with your team? Obviously, you've got the likes of Moutinho, Perez in there. Not players that are, looked upon as being highly valuable FPL assets at the moment. And I don't think Moutinho will ever really be high up on the list of players to be bringing in. You've got Mupay there on the bench. You were singing his praises earlier on when we were talking about the predictions. Are you set on that? Are you set on that?
No, that's what I'm saying, Jason. I think over the next couple of weeks, I'd probably be moving Perez out and Moutinho out. But everyone else, I'm quite happy with where that team's sitting.
Okay.
Especially when I look at the fixtures.
Yeah, okay. And let's just move on to your captaincy pick. You've gone with Mane. Obviously, Steve-O's got Mane and Salah in as well. So you've tripled up on the same. Well, let's be honest, the popular treble up. Two midfielders, one defender, and Alexander-Arnold. He went Salah. You've gone Mane. Are you decided on that? Is it up in the air for you still, or?
I think similar to Steve-O, he's probably looked at that and thought, yeah, Salah's on pens. He's also starting to hit a little bit of form. I was looking at it that recently I feel Mane actually performs better away from home than what Salah does. That's why I stuck the captaincy on Mane to begin with. If I'm going to do anything, it'll just be to swap it over to Salah, but it'll be one of the two.
Well,
I think you're right. Then Mane scored all the away goals, and Salah I think he scored like 1, hasn't he? 1 or 2 away.
Yeah.
That's it.
But as we were talking earlier, the Spurs defence can be so shambolic that there could easily be a couple of penalties in that game.
Yeah.
And it's Salah that's going to take them. So
that's a good shout. I mean, I think that you're going to have obviously a lot of thinking to do still. But yeah, safety is with Mane. But I think the explosiveness of Salah is there as well. It just depends on what you really want to do. If you the position that you're in, the rank that you're in, you can afford to take some risk, really. Yeah,
if you want to move up the ranks, you've got to do something different than the majority of people.
Yeah, I think people owning Mane and Salah, majority will go with Mane. A lot of people are going to go with Vardy. A lot of people are going to go. Maybe
Moutinho's your call. That's what you need to do.
Moutinho captain. There you go. You heard it from us first.
Yeah.
Interesting. Firmino's a differential, says Tommy Gunn in chat. All his goals are scored away. 5 or 6 of them at something.
There's been a few teams with that now set up.
No, I think money in the attack can be spent better. But fair play. If you're going to go Firmino, best of luck to you. So anything else to add about your team? I think we've pretty much covered it. Decent fixtures for a lot of your players there. You got them in for that hit, of course, and you've got plans ahead to deal with Perez and Moutinho. Let's bring up Firetog. Have you got your team posted in the team?
Yeah, it's in there.
Excellent. Firetog, let's just bring it up here. Ramsdale in goal. Are you confident Ramsdale getting you some points at home to Watford?
Sorry, you just cut out then.
Ramsdale in goal at home to Watford. You're looking for save points? You hoping, dreaming for a clean sheet?
I predicted 2-0 to Watford, so I'm not expecting a great deal out of Ramsdale, unfortunately. But doing a goalkeeper swap's just it's not not in the cards right now. So
You've gone with the Martial pick. Yeah, you said 2-0 to United.
Yeah,
he is the best captain option over Rashford and to the likes of Salah.
I think certainly on the United side, when it's a tight game, it's when it's a block. I don't really like the way Rashford plays. He's great when he's running on goal with the ball, but when he's in the box looking, he's not a Vardy. He's not. He doesn't seem sharp. He's not making little doubts and runs. So I think it's going to be that sort of game where Martial's going to be the better option. So I've gone with Martial. Salah's an option, as we just discussed against Spurs, but. As I said at the beginning on that one, I don't really know which way that game was going to go. Is Mourinho going to come and park the bus? I don't know what he's going to do. So
he's going to come out and park a massive big bendy bus. That's what he's going to park.
Yeah, and then again, Salah hasn't really scored away from home, so it could be Mane could be the right choice there. And obviously, I don't have Vardy, so that would be another choice. De Bruyne, I'm not really liking as a captaincy. I think. I was a bit put off with him playing so deep the other day, and then he played forward against United, but he played deep in whoever it was. Leeds, was it? He played. Who did he play in the FA Cup?
Not 100% actually. Can't remember. Chat will tell you.
Who you after? Sorry, what was that?
Who did City play in the FA Cup?
Well, just a minute. What?
Oh, did he? Was that the game he played?
One of the games. They played against. The FA Cup.
Port Vale.
Do you fear not owning Vardy?
Yes, slightly. I just can't get him in right now. And my plans for the next few moves are to double up or triple up on Liverpool, so he's not coming in before game week 25 at the earliest. But it's been I've been like that for the last since Vardy's been scoring all the goals. I've never had him. I've had Rashford. It's just the way it is. But
interesting. Okay.
I've got inside the top 500, so 500k. So I've started to, since Vardy's been off, I've started to make some moves. I've moved up 200k in the last few weeks. So having Vardy it's not as much having Vardy, it's not having a captain option that's been obvious. For 8 weeks until this weekend just gone, when I captained Salah, I'd had 1 assist out of 8 captains. So basically 3 points for my captain in 8 weeks.
Wow.
And that's killed my rank. Now everybody with Vardy's been captaining Vardy as an obvious choice, and it's been working. So not having an obvious choice has cost me, because sometimes I've had 4 strikers. I choose the one, and the other 3 have all scored. It's just sod's law. So. Yeah, Vardy's cost me in that respect, I think, but not so much in the fact that he's been getting points, because I've had other players have been getting points for me, just I haven't been captaining them.
Interesting. So far we've had no people captaining Vardy discussing on the show. Anyone captaining Vardy in chat? Anyone? X up in chat if you captaining Vardy. I don't suppose you want to see my team, guys, do you? So should we just wrap it up here? Get some callers on. Get some callers on to talk about their teams. Anyone?
We all need to see your team, Jason.
Like you're going to get.
It's all right. Steve-O's in bed, so he won't see it.
Steve-O's. He's got matchsticks. He's got matchsticks with his eyes open. It's like a scene out of A Clockwork Orange.
To be honest, the last twice that you've ran this stream, it's been about exactly this time that you've revealed your team. So I wouldn't be surprised if he set his clock for 21:47.
Okay, well let's drop the bombshell. Let's drop the bombshell, shall we?
Do you want the build-up music?
Go on then.
I'm only joking.
Go on, I thought you were going to do a drum roll. Okay, so I am actually doing something which is going to shock a few people. I am not going to do anything with my team. And I'm going to just stick with what I had. And some people will probably be like, well, that's because it's a rubbish team. And I probably would agree. And I've got Aurier there, sitting at me, looking at me in the face, thinking, I really don't want to play Aurier. Do I play Greenwood as a punt over Aurier, just in the hope that Ollie starts Greenwood, like he did midweek? Do I
just want to fly the duck formation the way you had that there?
The duck formation, yeah. Well, I'm hoping for an assist from Aurier, to be honest with you, but I don't know. Play Cantwell, get away at United. I mean, that's decent. I mean, I did say that I did think that De Gea would concede. I did think United could concede. Cantwell, what do you guys think? I'm gonna let the chat decide. I'm actually gonna let the chat pick my team. If you think Cantwell should start, put a C in chat. If you think Greenwood should start, put a G in chat. And then if you think Aurier should start, put an A in chat. There you go. It's C, G, or A in chat. There we go. Let's wait and see. Let's see what people are saying.
So what have you? So you're rolling a transfer basically, Jason. That's what you're saying.
I'm doing the unthinkable, my friend. I'm actually rolling a transfer. Absolutely. There we go.
I never thought I'd see the day. I've just...
Hey, wait until it's over, Llama. It's still 24 hours to go. He could be changing it tomorrow.
Slagged off my Perez hit, and he's still swarming about with Aurier in his team.
Wow, playing Cantwell. People at the chat have spoken. There you go, chat. It's on you now. If Aurier gets a clean sheet and a blooming goal, I'm going to lose it on air, I swear.
You've all been predicting that Liverpool are going to thrash them, so...
I've got Gaeta in goal, home to Arsenal. I'm hoping he can put on an absolute masterclass and get another 12 save points. That would be beautiful. Penalty save. There we go. Steve-O's reaction to that will be priceless. I'd pay the Playmaker subscription 10 times over just to watch that. We got Sterling and Aguero, big risks. It seems all season it's been me and Aguero as a risk. It really has, and I've been very burnt. I've been burnt, but so many times by Aguero, and at this point, it's almost got to the point where people will laugh at how stubborn I am with Aguero. I'm going to be captaining him.
Yeah, see, I would go with that. Like I said that earlier on when we were doing the predictions, that if I did have Aguero in my team and I reckoned that he was going to start, then that's where my captain's armband was going to go. So I think you could be onto a winner with that. But as you said there though, with Aguero and Sterling, they were like the two biggest headaches in my whole team earlier on in the season.
Well,
I'm so glad I've just got KDB now, because it just does away with that.
It's going to be an assessment over the next few game weeks on what I do, because if I roll my transfer, obviously I've got the 3 Liverpool in at the moment. Am I going to stick with the 2 in Gomez and Alexander-Arnold and have just Salah? Am I going to bring in Mane? Thing is, I don't want to make it look, because I'm doing so badly. This is the thought process. Do I bring in players that have been brought in and play it safe and not really gain any rise in rank when they do well, or do I go completely, off by keeping Aguero, captaining Aguero, and hoping that Sterling does something in the hope that they outscore the likes of Mane, the likes of Aubameyang, the likes of Jimenez. These are the players that I need to outscore, and these are what I'm hoping for. And up until now, it's been an absolute disaster. And my stubbornness at Man City, especially with Aguero, has backfired massively, leading to red arrow after red arrow after red arrow. Not to mention the hits that I've been taking too.
Well, I think it's probably the hits that's been. If you add up all your hits, it's those that's been taking down. Not so much your players. It's just getting.
No, Firetalk. It's I need to have a word with Pep, because City aren't winning 5 or 6 goals anymore. It's not. No, it's no.
And I'm just not having it anymore, Pep.
What's going on?
It's a bit worrying that he benched both Aguero and Jesus the other day, so you don't know which one's going to come out now. If he played Jesus, you could have thought Aguero was going to play. But...
When I saw the lineups, I was thinking, you know what, Pep? It's almost like you're doing it on purpose. Like, he kind of gets he isn't, obviously, but it's almost like he knows that there are some people that are like wanting to, play Aguero in their fantasy teams. But no, he's going to bench both of them. But no,
That's right, because Pep's got Jason Cam in his office.
he's a subscriber, mate.
It's more important to him how your fantasy team is than how his actual team is.
He watches the show. Yeah. But no, it's that's my team anyway.
I like your Aguero pick, and maybe this is the new Jason. I can't see it though. It's 2020. I can see you taking a 20-point hit soon.
Why would I take a 20-point hit when I got my wild card? I mean, there's going to be times. There's going to be a time where the thing is, the first half of the season, I've been saying it all last year. I said, look, this is the time of the season. The game week 5, game week 6, game week 7, up till game week 15. That's the time where I can take risky hits and try to really gain ranks. Now we're getting to the business end of the season where you've got to be a lot more careful with what you do. I mean, the damage is probably already done, and I'm not going to lie. I mean, the chances of finishing in the top 100,000 is slipping away drastically. I'm maybe looking at a top 200 finish, maybe top 250 if I'm lucky. But I'm going to try my best. I'm going to try my best to get to turn over a new leaf and behave in my point expenditure and actually not listen. Well, I have never listened to chat. Maybe I should start listening to chat. Well, I've started listening to chat. I've brought in Cantwell. There you go, chat. You can be happy now. If I get big points from Cantwell, you can all say it's because of you. Congratulations.
So you're going to do that, Jason, through differentials to make up from the other players that are ahead of you? Is that your plan? I mean, you're not going to say you're not going to do a lot of risks.
I can't do that many, mate. I can't do that many differentials, essentially. I think at this point, captaining Aguero is massive. Still owning Sterling, especially when people are looking to triple up on Liverpool, especially the double Liverpool, and they own KDB already. I think Sterling is someone that is another great differential. Not exactly in form at the moment, but again, it's a could be with Sterling, and the only issue is that there's a risk with minutes. Of course there is, but as long as Sane's out, I'm hopeful. As long as Sane's out, some might say I'm deluded. That's fine. You've got your opinion. You're entitled to it. But I'm stubborn. I'm sticking with these two City players, and I'm hoping. I'm hoping.
What a difference this could be to Elite. You're sitting there taking no more hits and being conservative, and Steve-O might actually listen to his own history.
Could be. but anyway, we've also got to think about the Elite Champions League as well. I've started off really well in that, and I want to continue doing really well in that. So I've also got that in the back of my mind. So
I think that's becoming a lot of focus of people's focus now that if they can't reach the overall rank they want, or they're at the mini leagues they're too far behind the mini league. A lot of people are turning to that because it's still in its infancy to say, what, this is what I'm going to focus on this, and hopefully I can get through this.
Son next week.
Whose was that again?
What's that? Sorry.
No, it's fine.
So, what's this? Sorry, I'm just reading the chat at the moment. I'm reading it on multiple different ways. Let's quickly bring up. Where is it gone? It's gone. It's disappeared. Someone's saying about Sterling was awful against United. David Hackinson, and also someone else said that. Tommy Gunn. Yeah, he was awful. Well, I wouldn't say he was awful. I mean, he wasn't great. He wasn't awful. United were awful.
Don't really want to.
Who am I against? Who am I against in the? Yeah, that's a good point. Let me find out. In fact, have you got the sheet in front of you, Llama? Who am I against this upcoming week? John Harris. John Harris. There we go.
Yeah, it's John Harris.
Yeah, we talked about it earlier on. Yeah, John Harris. That's who I'm against. Bruce saying that he wants his Bitcoin in chat. Well, you got to do really well to get a chance of winning that. City did play in second gear. The second half, it was passing it around sideways. Sterling will bounce back, says Jacko. I hope so. I really do hope so. So yeah, that's my team. We've got Anish in the waiting room along with Skink. We'll get a couple of callers on, and then I think we'll just knock it on the head. Anish T28. How you doing, Anish? How you doing? Anish, can you hear me? Anish, are you there?
Hello? Yeah.
Hello, Anish. What's going on, buddy? Did you have a good New Year?
Yeah, good. And yours?
Yeah, it was not too bad, thank you. It was quite eventful. It flew by. We're now in 2020. Gameweek 22, are you excited?
Yeah, very excited actually.
Have you posted your team and the team screenshots by any chance?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah,
I'm bringing it.
21-43.
Yeah, got it up on screen here. Anish, are you confident this game week you're going to get scored big points? You're the first person tonight that I've spoken to that's captaining Jamie Vardy, and you're benching Grealish, and you're playing Traore. Firetug will like you. Talk to me about your team.
I had 2 free transfers, so I used them both already.
What were your transfers?
Ali and Kane to Maddison and Vardy.
Ali and Kane to Maddison and Vardy. So you're thinking that, like me, I think also that Leicester can do well against Southampton. Maybe not 9-0. Obviously, Southampton kind of improving their form, but Firetug coming out with some interesting statistics. What's your thoughts in that game then, Anish?
I think it's going to be I don't think it's going to be a massively scoring game, but I think it'll probably be 2-1 or 3-1 to Leicester.
Okay, and you're definitely going to be keeping the armband on Jamie Vardy?
It's not a definite, but it's 90% going to be.
Okay, interesting.
How would you move it to Rashford? Would you?
I'm thinking Rashford or KDB.
Not even Martial, because obviously Firetug's going with Martial.
I'd move it to Jimenez. I'm predicting 4-0 to Wolves.
Yeah, there we go.
Go on and read up about Newcastle's terrible defensive injuries. You might change your mind.
There you go. Firetug there. He's been doing all right on the old predictions. He's saying go with Jimenez. You know what? I think this game week, that's a lovely pick having Jimenez. I can't believe people transferring him out, to be honest, in recent weeks. I mean, obviously the double game for Liverpool in mind and stuff, trying to save some money, downgrading. But I just think that fixture does look really plump for Jimenez, doesn't it? For Jimenez owners. What's your thoughts on me? I know we're talking about your team, but what's your thoughts on me? You own De Bruyne there. Has De Bruyne been an option for you as a captain, or obviously I've got 2 City players. I've captained one of them. De Bruyne being anywhere near the thought process, or has it just always been between Vardy and Rashford?
I think I haven't really thought too much about it. I just kept it on Vardy since I brought him in. As soon as I brought him in, I just put it on him and haven't really.
Yeah, set and forget almost.
Yeah, just sort of as if it was my bus teammate.
Yeah, well, I mean, the people in chat saying you've got a decent team there. You've got obviously no Liverpool attackers being what Mr. Anderson's pointed out there, quite obviously there. I would imagine you're going to probably do some transfers to bring in one of Mane or Salah up, for that double game week. Maybe even both.
I'm going triple defence.
Triple defence, okay, interesting. Ooh. What's that going to be? Gomez, Arnold, and Robertson.
No, it'll be Van Dijk.
You're going to be
and Robertson.
Wow, that's a lot of money. So where are you going to sacrifice to afford that then?
I've got 3 million in the bank at the moment.
He's saving up his money.
Okay.
You Scottish?
I was thinking to do Aurier to Robertson for a hit this week.
Not this week. Don't take a hit if you need to.
Not for hit for a defender. Maybe it won't pay off, to be honest with you. Is Robertson? I know that he can get an assist, but yeah, maybe you don't need to do it at the moment. It's not you're desperate to do a move to field a decent team. Your team's very decent anyway. If you were to do that, who would you drop? Dunk?
Probably Dunk. Yeah. I'm not too sure about double Brett.
Yeah, and obviously
then he's got to get a clean sheet just to break even. So all you're then hoping for is attacking returns.
Yeah.
But then again, Dunk could easily get an assist from a corner or something.
Could do.
I must admit, when I was Brighton the other night, Dunk's involved in pretty much every corner kick in some shape or form.
Yeah, he even takes some of the free kicks as well. So.
Yeah. I've actually looked at getting Dunk in my team, to be honest.
We've Matip's back, by the way, says Simeon, but I don't think he'll be playing. I think Gomez is a better partnership at the moment with Van Dijk. Very quickly, and some people, Samir Khan saying in the chat, rate my team for this week, ? In terms of community fairness and what we tend to do on the Elite FPL show is if people want to talk to us about their teams, we just ask them to come on air like Anish is doing. We like to talk to various people about their thought processes this game week, and obviously many game weeks this season. It's been pretty successful. We can't just do team rate my teams, so everybody would be here until like 3 a.m. So yeah, if you want to get on and talk to us, by all means get in the Discord details in chat. If someone could just put those in chat, that'd be great. So yeah, Anish, decent looking team there. You've held on to Kelly. Not that you're ever going to play him this game week, but no, I like your team. You've got Grealish there. You got some nice set of players, and your plan is different for the Liverpool triple up. I'll give you that. It's different. Not going with a midfielder, but I hope it serves you well. I really do, Anish. Thank you for coming on.
No worries.
Cheers, buddy. Speak to you soon, dude.
Cheers, Anish.
Take care.
We've got Skink97 on. We'll bring him on in a moment, just in case he's listening to the stream. Please mute the stream, Skink. We'll get you on in a second. So yeah, first Vardy captainer. Interesting that he's going to go with a Liverpool trio in defence. Is that something that crossed your mind at all, or is it? I think it never crossed my mind.
Nah, it never came into my mind. I couldn't
Bit
watch
risky.
a game. I couldn't watch a Liverpool game if I had three defenders in it.
Bit risky, isn't it? Just
two away games too. So
yeah, Tottenham. You wouldn't be that surprised if Tottenham got a goal, would you? Let's be honest. Anyway, let's move in. Skink97. Good evening, Skink. How you doing, buddy?
Hi, Jason. How you doing?
Yeah, not too bad. Happy New Year, my friend. Welcome to 2020. Did you have a good one?
Yeah, I did have a good one. Thank you for asking. How about you?
Was it a big party, or did you stay at home?
Yeah, there was a big party.
Great. I stayed at home and watched it on TV. How sad do I sound?
Oh
and I watched Craig David on the after party on the TV as well. It was amazing. It was like going back to my childhood, back to 1997. There we go.
That's just an age thing, Jace.
Rewind when the crowd say "Bolt Selector." All right, Kez. Anyway, let's move on. Skink.
Can I get a rewind?
Yeah, absolutely. Skink? Have you? Yeah, you have. You have posted it in there. Brilliant.
I like this.
Right.
I think you'll like this.
Gaeta. There we go. Trent Alexander-Arnold, Sidibe, Lundstrom, Mane, De Bruyne, Maddison, Sarr. He's gone with Sarr. He's gone with the guy that Steve-O's been looking at very closely. Son. Calvert-Lewin and Vardy. Calvert-Lewin, captain Calvert-Lewin. Is that just for drama on tonight's show, or are you genuinely thinking of Captain Calvert-Lewin at home to Brighton?
To be honest, I'm genuinely thinking of captaining Calvert-Lewin. He's been on outstanding form so far, so I thought, like right now, all you need to do to break away is like make a good captain choice, and then those green arrows come up. So I thought, since everyone will be captaining Vardy in Southampton, and I'm not sure it's going to come back 9-0 again, so I decided to try another option and hope Calvert pulls up.
It's brave. It's brave, dude. And obviously is he second highest? Someone in chat could probably let me know, but isn't he like the second highest transfer player in this game week? I think that it's got the potential to really propel you up the leaderboards. Whereabouts are you in the world at the moment?
Right now I'm in your league. I'm in the Elite FPL Community League. I'm second in that league.
Second?
Yeah. Huh?
Oh my life! Whereabouts are you in the world? Let's bring you up, dude. Second in the Community League.
Yeah.
He's like, no big deal. No big deal. Yeah, just
sitting there in second,
just it's easy for me, mate. Just sitting in second. He's 1,000 in the world, just outside
58. Of 1,058. Is that you?
1,058 in the world.
Yeah, that's me. But I'm having a really tough decision this game week. I think it's gonna be a tough one, to be honest, because everyone's gonna put their chips on Vardy and hope he, like most people, will captain Vardy. I'm kind of expecting it to happen.
Are you going to be hiding when that game's on? You're going to be watching it and thinking, "Oh my god, what have I done?" Is that a Danish flag, by the way?
Yeah, that's Danish. I'm from Denmark.
Oh well, awesome. For I don't know if we've had any other Denmark people from Denmark on the show, so awesome.
So I like the way you've went about that then with the like. So you're so highly ranked overall, but yet you're still happy to go differential with your captain's pick. I mean, when I was highly ranked last season, I nosebleed. So I was making risky decisions, and I plummeted back down to like 30,000 or whatever it was when I finished. So are you happy going that kind of
He's still looking up, Llama. He's not looking behind him, he's looking up.
Yeah, because there's a time, I'm only saying this because it's worked out before in my game week. There's a time I captained Ings when he scored a brace. That pushed me way up, like above my standings, because he was a differential pick and he kind of scored more points than people expected. So I'm just hoping he scores, even if it's just one goal. That's enough for me, because if Vardy scores a lot, I'll still have like half of it since he's not my captain.
Yeah.
So it's like a Hail Mary pass.
Yeah. So you're like, you've played your shield, but you've got a decent sword ready to strike, basically.
Yeah, like that small little jab that you get.
You love that little analogy, don't you? The sword and the shield. It's good. It's a good one. Show me the Mane in chat there. He's what's going on here? Dropping like a stone to keep you happy, says show me the Mane to Daniel Jarman. And show me the Mane. Who are you going to be captain in this game week? Let's see what's a prize that Show Me Mane may have in store for us, shall we?
I also like the Sun pick as well, though, Jason.
I do like the Son pick. So, what's your prediction in that game? Sorry, the Liverpool Tottenham Liverpool game, I should say, the right way around.
I think Liverpool might win it like 2-1. So I'm hoping, because Mourinho needs to do something. He's been on recent bad form, so he needs like to pull one up, and he likes doing the upsets to big teams. So since they don't have a striker, it's either going to be Son or Lucas Moura that will be the main attacking lead. So I'm hoping if Liverpool are to score, I'm banking on Son to do something. But I don't think it'll be a Liverpool clean sheet. Liverpool won't have a clean sheet. That's what I'm thinking.
Wow. Okay. Well, you've been doing really well so far on your gut, and with Kane injured, it could only be great for Son potentially, can't it? So, I think that it's such a team of differentials, enough differentials in there that God, if the stars align for you, then you could be breaking into that top 1,000. And how would you feel? Have you broken into top 1,000 this year?
Yeah, twice. Actually, dropped.
You're so laid back about it. Yeah, but I've been there before, Jason. I just wanted to go back outside the top 1k just because I wanted to get back in it again.
Mate, any more laid back, you'd be laying down. I think that this is either genius or this is a man trying to be a bit too smart. And I'm not quite sure which of the two it is. I'll find out on Saturday.
See when he moves to first place in the community league.
Oh man, dude, fair play to you, mate. Honestly, stick to your guns, mate. Captain Calvert-Lewin, if that's what your gut said, do it, mate. It's paid off this season. Don't listen to all the people that might tell you to go with Vardy or Mane as the safer options. Do what you want and play your own game, as Wiz would say, and you get a lot of respect. A few people in the chat respecting your decision now. I respect your decision. I think, I tell you what, like I said, he's in form. Okay, he didn't do anything midweek, but he against Brighton, I can easily see him doing something. I really can, and best of luck to you, my friend Skink. I really do. I do hope that you continue to have good success. Second in our community league. That's brilliant. Thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your team. No, a pleasure, man. A pleasure. You make it worth every minute, every second. Thank you so much, dude.
Thank you.
Awesome. So we had a Jamie Vardy captainer in Anish, and then now we've got a Calvert-Lewin captainer in Skink. And Skink, obviously, just outside the top 1,000. Let that sink in. Let that sink into you guys. All of you guys there. Just outside the top 1,000. Captain Calvert-Lewin. Let's see if he does. What does he know that we don't? The fact that he's got the bravery to do it is probably why he is where he is. And fair play to him. And there's me, Captain Aguero, who probably will only get about 15 minutes. There you go. And I think, any final thoughts before we wrap this show up? Have you enjoyed it, guys?
I want to just say thank you very much. I know my pucker pad wasn't as good as our very own Devo, and he'll be welcomed back with open arms once he catches up on his sleep. The note that I will leave you on is this. When you sniggered about Perez, he's now due a price rise.
Mate.
Good evening and good night, folks.
Well, if that's what you're after, mate, if you're just after some price rises instead of FPL points, then by all means, you're doing well, mate. Well done.
But no, thank you, guys. It was really, really good. Cheers.
Thank you, and keep an eye out on social media, guys. For any sudden stream that Steve may or may not do. Also, keep an eye out on Twitter and on Discord for any announcements on live streams this weekend. Yes, this weekend, maybe Saturday. I will be doing a live stream during the 3 o'clock games. There's a good chance I'll do it. Signing out, guys. Take it easy. Have a good one. Good evening. And then look forward to Game Week 22.
Thanks, Jason. Good night, guys.